I don't think it's necessary, but I do believe it is an initiation. When we say, like, do you need heartbreak? Like, it is inevitable on some level in your life. Where that heartbreak could be a relationship, it could be your parents dying, it could be your best friend like getting heavy into drugs and you have to let that relationship go. Heartbreak doesn't have to be a relationship heartbreak. Yeah, I think heartbreak is inevitable, and so because it's inevitable, yes, it's a massive part of life, and it's an initiation into who am I now? Like, how do I deal with all these emotions? How do I rebuild myself from this place? How do I come back into love?
Tyran, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Thanks, Frank. It's a pleasure to be here, man. Excited to have a chat.
Yeah, brother, really excited as well, man. Had a chance to dive into your work since Johnny, good friend of the show, Johnny L. Sasser, connected us a few weeks back, man. I've really been looking forward to this because, like I told you, we've taken two different journeys over the last couple of years to really kind of end up in a similar place with this men's work, this masculinity, and really helping men get free of any sexual addictions that they may have, man. So curious, man. I know you do, a lot of work with a lot of men out there. What are some of the biggest issues and challenges that you're seeing men facing in today's world when it comes to masculinity and their sexuality?
I think it's, we're seeing it a lot with the whole gender fluidity and all that as well. It's like, what is a man these days, and that's been probably the biggest thing, like it looks like you and I, while we're in different countries, we probably had different upbringings, we probably are very similar men. We don't mind a little bit of aggression. We're pretty straight down the line. We go to the gym, we work out. We've got a very solid sense of self. We believe we know who we are. We've got a set of values that we choose to live by. And life's not what it was when I don't know how old you are. I'm 36, but when we were born, when I was born, my dad, you did not express emotion when you're a man. You just didn't cry. You just didn't express. And I think our societal structure is evolving faster than we can keep up with it, as a society, as individuals. So it's like, all of a sudden, this new information, this new education, all this stuff's coming, and our consciousness is up leveling. The evolution of humanity is trying to keep up with the level of awareness and the level of consciousness that's now, prevalent across the world. Now that we have the internet, all of a sudden, everyone has information that they didn't have 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And so, what it is to be a man is really starting to come into question. Now, for me, when I work with men around sexuality and when I work on my own stuff around sexuality, it was like, can I really go there? Can I really do the things that I desire? Can I really step into the darker, the shadower aspects of sexuality? And then if I do that, what does that mean? And also, can I surrender more? Can I soften? Can I let go? Can I experience more pleasure? And, when we start to step outside of the, let's say, old school narrow belief of like the limitations of what sex is and isn't, when we start to play in either way, whether it's the more aggressive, darker, let's say, BDSM type stuff, or whether it's the more softer, gentler, surrender aspect, the question comes up of what type of man am I in both of these aspects? Can I play in this? Who am I? What's my value? What do my values mean now? And how do I lead? How do I follow? How do I guide? And so, the biggest challenge is like, who am I if I step into my desires? Who am I if I own these, let's say, not so normal desires or beliefs or quirks or kinks that I may have sexually? So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, because we want to have this box. This is a man, because it makes it easy. If we know that that's a man, then we know that that's just what we have to do. But I find that, life is a lot bigger than a box, and so when we start to explore, that question comes up, and then it just gets really scary, and we start to lose certainty.
Absolutely, brother. No, I would agree, almost 100% with what you shared there. And I'm 39, by the way, so we're right in line kind of with age, kind of even though we did grow up on different parts of the world, it seems like our experiences and our journeys here have been very, very similar. Man, I can remember the first time seeing my dad cry was when my grandfather passed away. It was when he lost his dad, and he did his best to not show it to us. Like he went into the bathroom and cried the ugly tears, and it's like me, I cried yesterday at church. It's like, so it's a whole
100%.
different, it's a whole different
Yeah.
world, man. So
Yeah.
how do you look at masculinity, right? Because you kind of started there with this whole gender fluidity, like the society's trying to put men into this box, toxic masculinity. It's like I think there's so much confusion around, if you're a man, does that mean like you have toxic masculinity? If you're lacking masculinity, how do you become a man? So yeah, how do you kind of like articulate masculinity in your own terms?
Yeah, 100%. So for me personally, I was on a men's event this weekend actually, and we had to write down, what is it for you? What is it to be a man? What does it mean to you? And I still believe that, to serve, to follow, to protect, to provide, to lead, to inspire. I still believe that they are attributes of masculinity. Now, they can be very much attributes of femininity too, you know. And so what's the difference between the masculine version and the feminine version, for example, And I went real deep into tantric communities and open relating communities and sexual, like conscious sexuality communities on my journey. And we went real deep into the whole masculine feminine polarity, you know. Sometimes you can get overly lost in it, and I think and I believe for myself and for the men that I work with, I try to keep it as simple and as straightforward as possible because, don't get me wrong, there's lots of subtleties and there's lots of nuances, but ultimately, when I can just say, for me, masculinity is to protect, to provide, to serve, to lead, to inspire, in whatever way that looks like for me, and that's, I think that the part, it's like my values are mine, and those are some of them, for example, and but what inspiration look like, what me inspiring others looks like could be different to the way that you inspire others in your life, and so I think that's where the overarching theme can be the same. Like maybe we both believe that inspiration is a masculine quality or a masculine virtue, but what that looks like is different because we are different men. And what you like, what you enjoy, like Johnny, for example, loves shooting guns and fucking riding helicopters and shit. Like I would love to do that, but that's not the world I grew up in over here in Australia. Like you're lucky if you can get your hands on a gun. Like they don't exist over here, right? Like it's not a thing. Um, Not to say that I wouldn't like to, and I haven't shot a few guns in my life, but it's a very different thing, So he's inspiring, I'm inspiring, but the way that we inspire other men is very, very different because of the realities that we live in. So, like for me, masculinity, like I said, to protect, to serve, to provide, to inspire, um, uh, and those types of qualities. And if you want to look at it simply, masculine energy is a penetrative energy, and feminine energy is a receptive energy. So for me, my protection would be a penetrative protection. A feminine protection would be more of a like a holding, and yeah, exactly. So that's the way I try to break it down. Just try and keep it super simple.
Yeah. And do you think men need to be aware and familiar and probably integrated with their feminine side to truly embrace their masculinity and truly embrace who they are as a man?
Yes, and I think that, without the proper context, it can get really misconstrued. So for me, masculine and feminine is a polarity, and it exists so that we can experience both of them. That's it. Just like temperature, right? If you didn't know what hot felt like, you wouldn't have a context for cold. And so, again, my ability to put up with hot might be better than someone else's. That doesn't mean that their version of hot and my version of hot are different. It just, what's hot for them is hot for them. What's hot for me is hot for me. And so if you didn't know what hot felt like, you wouldn't know what cold was either. And that's what gives you the ability to experience both. And that's the same for true for masculine and feminine. It's like, yes, you need to understand what it is and you need to have some context around it. I don't think you need to put on a dress and lipstick and dance around in order to embody your feminine, right? Like you don't. I've done it. I've done things like that, and I'm not. And cool. It's kind of liberating on some level, but it's not necessary. Like I don't think that men have to. They have to understand the feminine. They have to know that it exists, and they need to have points of reference for what it is inside their body, so that they can, yes, further stand in their masculine essence with more certainty and clarity and belief. 100%.
Absolutely, man. Let's go back a little bit here. Tyran, let's talk about, your journey and your story, and kind of add a layer of context to maybe, some of the things we've gotten into. And I think that'll really circle back. We can touch on these points a little bit deeper, man. When did this kind of, pursuit and journey into understanding masculinity start for you? Was there kind of a genesis moment with all of this? Like, take us back there, man.
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up country Australia, country South Australia, playing footy, taking drugs, drinking piss, rooting birds, like just the standard outback Australia, and probably outback nearly every Western country in the world, right?
Yeah.
In my we played Aussie rules, you guys play NFL or basketball, same shit, different color. My dad is from England. He's an English soccer hooligan that grew up in Australia. Is the way that I like to define him, right? He's a doesn't mind a blue, doesn't mind a beer, and and tells you what he thinks straight off the bat. And I
Man's
love
man.
him. I love it. Yeah, man's man, 100%, 100%. And my mum is like the complete opposite, right? The very typical like man's man and very feminine woman. Like she was a hairdresser and very fluid and loving and gentle, and I've learned to have my dad's thick skin, and I've always had my mum's heart. Like my heart is soft and squishy, and I cry at dramatic romantic movies and all that, and I can't not do it. Like I just can't not. And it was really hard growing up as a with a dad like that, and having those emotions and being around the country boys. And like, don't get me wrong, we would banter and have a laugh. So but I always had this soft side, and I pushed it and I suppressed it down, and I hid it away from everyone because I didn't want to get picked on. I didn't want to be called gay or a faggot and all those things. And I had aspects of that like I was called those at times at school. Whenever I expressed softness. So harden up and toughen up, and that's it. Push it to the side. Long story short, I hit 27, and I had done a lot of things to try to fit into my environment. I started growing dope, and I was a bricklayer, so I worked in construction. I drank a lot. I took a lot of drugs. I partied a lot. I bought a couple of homes. I had a girlfriend, and ultimately, like I just ignored that, like this other softer aspect of me my whole life, and I just kept doing things to try to fit in. And long story short, it led me to a breakdown. I had 28. I got involved with the bikies. They came and kicked the door in. My girlfriend left because she didn't feel safe, which fair enough. um and then I still wouldn't own that. And then I went out to the mines, and I just went into the gym hard, like flat out, and just kept pushing down this unhappy emotion that was, trying to come to the surface. And ultimately I had a breakdown, and I realized that I hated the man that I was. I was working out in the mines in Western Australia. I was jerking off to porn 4 times a day. I was going to the gym twice a day. I was using Tinder like I was a shareholder. And it was just like that was it. And then one of the little wake up calls was I tried to masturbate without porn once. I was 27, and I couldn't get an erection. Like, could not get an erection without porn at 27 years old. And I was heartbroken when my girlfriend left, and every woman I slept with after that was like there was no emotion. There was absolutely no heart connection whatsoever. It was literally, can I put my dick in her? Can I come? And can I move on to the next one as quickly as possible? And what that did, on top of the 4 times a day jerking off and going to the gym and pumping my body full of protein and creatine and L-carnite and all the things to try to balance all my shit out. I'm just glad I never got on steroids. Was like I just couldn't. Orgasms didn't even feel good. Every time I would ejaculate, there wasn't even that much pleasure. Every time I had sex with a woman afterwards, I was just like I literally felt like I'd eaten something disgusting and I wanted to vomit. Like I just got this real sick feeling inside my belly. And if we were laying in bed, they would try to cuddle. I'd be like, no, I don't cuddle. I don't like, I couldn't even touch them. Like I just felt disgusting. And, this was obviously happening for a little while, and I knew that this wasn't good, but I didn't have a way out. Um, and so when I didn't get that erection, I was like, fuck, all right, Tyron, this is not, you're 27. You should be in the prime of your life, like you should be good. And so, yeah, I quit porn, like that was enough of a realization to quit porn. I went cold turkey for a week. And I had a wet dream 7 days later because the body was used to, four times a day.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a wet dream a week later. And that kind of rebooted my system a little bit. I think I was pretty lucky, that kind of rebooted my system. I mean, I started having sex a couple of weeks after that again, but like I just noticed that I didn't feel as disgusting, you know, and I noticed that I was trying to have a better connection with the women that I was making love to. And I mean, I knew it wasn't enough, and so I bought a one-way ticket to Europe and I went traveling. And I was like, I need to sort this shit out, you know, like yeah, I quit the mines, went back home, started taking drugs again, and lasted about 3 months, and that's when I was like, nah, I need to go. So I bought a one-way ticket to Europe. Everyone thought I was going to burn Europe to the ground. I was going to write a blog. Everyone thought it was going to be about all my debaucherous sexual party acts. And you know, the opening post was just about how depressed I was with my life and how much I hated the man that I was. And no one in my life knew, not a single soul. I couldn't tell. I didn't tell anyone. I was the party boy. I was the loud one. I was the one that was naked on the table with his shirt flowing around his head. You know, toilet paper up my bum, on fire, running around the sports club. Like that was me. And yeah, I just fucking hated myself. So, you know, I heard about the Kama Sutra. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that my sexuality was wild, and I had no control over it. You know, like getting laid was the single most important thing to me in my life because that kind of justified that I was worthy. When a woman let me have sex with her, that was like, you're okay. You've got, you know, someone loves you enough. And that was what I used as justification. So I started reading Tantra books, to learn how, you know, what Tantra was, and try to get this, you know, needing to jerk off every day thing under control. And, you know, I still wouldn't talk to anyone about the sex thing. Like I told them I was sad, but I wouldn't tell anyone about the sex thing because, you know, I used to come really quick because I was jerking off so much. And, you know, external stimulation, like look at the phone, jerk off 2 minutes, like train how you play, right? Like if that's how you train, and then you know, you train for a 2 hour game, you don't train for 2 minutes, you train for 3 hours. So yeah, anyway, failed lots of times, lots of shame spirals around I can't even not come, you know, like lots of self-judgment, criticism. Um, you know, went and joined Buddhist monasteries, went and did my yoga teacher training in India, like went the whole other way, like went hyper spiritual, hyper, you know, hyper conscious. Um, and just kind of ignored the whole sexuality thing. And you know, I got better at ignoring it, but I never mastered it, right? I never got to a place where I was in a healthy relationship with it. And then after about 2 years, I had my first non-ejaculatory orgasm. I was, you know, kissing with a woman, and we were running a lot of energy. We were, you know, like dry humping, people call it. Um, and eventually I had this orgasm, but I didn't ejaculate. And I was like, what the fuck was that? She was like, that was a full body orgasm. I was like, holy shit, this Tantra thing really fucking works, you know? And then not long after, a friend of mine, or my masseuse, who's been, I didn't know had been studying Tantra for 25 years, gave me a link to a website, for these people that run sexuality retreats. And I read one, and it just activated something in my brain, you know. And I was like, I've been ignoring this thing for 2 years, trying to get a hold of it, but you know, it still sits there, right? It still has power over me, and me ignoring it, just like my emotions when I was depressed, like just ignoring my emotions didn't mean that I was in control of them. So I went on this sexuality retreat, and it just blew my fucking world apart, right? It was just, they talked about consent, they talked about boundaries, they talked about energetic penetration, they talked about physical penetration, you know, we talked about sexual shame, like it was a co-gender thing, so the men and women. So all of a sudden I was talking to women about things that I would never ever have ever spoken to women about before. I was talking to other men about things around sexuality that I would never ever have spoken to a group of men before. Women were talking to me about things that they'd experienced that I would never have heard before. And the liberation that came from that 1 week event was like, this is needed, right? Like real sex ed, like not just put a condom on and, you know, blah blah blah, but like actual, all the intimacy, all the energetic exchanges that happen when people sexually engage. And that just kind of lit a fire under me of holy shit. And that's when I started talking about my whole journey, and all of a sudden, you know, my post started going semi-viral. You know, they started getting thousands of views and hundreds of likes, and everything just kind of grew, and then it evolved into a business. That's the short version of it.
Yeah, man. A lot to chew on there, and so many things we could dive into. I want to go back though to the beginning, right? I think, as men oftentimes, and we know that you and I both know there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of men that are in that exact same position. They're in their mid to late 20s. They can't ejaculate without the use of pornography. They're suffering from porn-induced erectile dysfunction. They're lacking any purpose, any meaning, any joy, any real intimacy in their life. But they've accepted this as the status quo, right? Like they're not willing to look inside. So for you, I'm curious, like, where did the level of awareness come from for you, that like the minute it happened? Because with me, brother, like I had a porn addiction for 20 years. I was competing as a bodybuilder. I was at the top of my physical, peak in my early 30s. Yet to have sex, I'm having to utilize both Viagra and Cialis. And I knew that it was wrong, but I'm like, hey, this is at least going to help me get the job done. So I was literally taking them like they were Tic Tacs. Like it wasn't until other things happened in my life that really shook me and woke me up, like almost a real rock bottom moment where I contemplated kind of ending it all. And I never want to get there because that's a dark place to be. So what do you think was it about you? Was it something in your upbringing? Was it surroundings? Were there people that you knew that kind of raised your awareness to begin to explore some of these things?
Like I said, when I couldn't get an erection at 27, that was like this moment of there's something wrong. You need to change. And my mum and dad have been always pretty, like they grew up in the 60s. They're a bit hippie, they're a bit free, they're a bit, like I said, my dad's still an English soccer hooligan. At the same time, he went and lived in India for months, like he lives in a few spectrums as well. And I'm very happy that my parents always gave me permission to go and try things, like one of their big things, like don't get me wrong, they taught me values, they taught me, hard work and discipline, and they also gave me a lot of permission to just go and explore. And so, when I said I wanted to go traveling and I wanted to leave, both of them were super supportive of that. Right. And I was 27. I'd had two homes, so I'd already worked hard. I had a trade, I'd had bought two homes. I'd done the right thing for a long time. So they were very, very supportive. And my dad stopped traveling so that he could, provide for my mum and look after me too. So I think he also was like, go son, like I wish I had traveled more, like go and do it. And I think that was a massive part. They didn't know how sad I was, and obviously it wasn't so much around the sexuality thing, but they were very, very supportive of exploration and experiencing life. They very much believe that you must experience life to learn. Now I'm going to tell you what I think is right and wrong, and you still need to learn. I've put in a lockup a few times, and the first person I would call was my dad, right? And he never got angry whenever I was in trouble, ever, right? Like it was almost like he was almost proud of me getting in trouble, on some level, because he knows you need to experience and you fuck up. So yeah, I didn't really have anyone else until I came back from my 1 year away, and I started talking to my masseuse, getting massages, and he gave me more permission in the Tantra thing, like he was very, he gave me my first tantric massage, which was super fucking edgy to get from a dude. And I, being a 28-year-old guy, and I'm just like, oh, this is fucking weird. And I don't know about, and all that type of stuff. So, he was a massive support for me as well. It's like, yeah, I've done this retreat and this retreat, and, a body is a body and this and that. And I was just like, he really planted the seed of, you're the only one judging yourself, you're the only one kind of stereotyping yourself. But working out in the mines, everyone's got a porn addiction out there. Like we used to share favorite porns, and we used to joke about how quick we would come. And construction, same thing, oh yeah, 2 pumps last night, like fucking blah, blah, blah. Mate, as soon as you feel that nice, juicy, wet bit, like it's all over. And it was like, men would just use humor to overcome the shame they had around their sexual experiences. And I think it's pretty prevalent in most specifically Western culture. It doesn't matter whether it's America, Australia, England, fucking whatever. We want to use humor to override the shame or the fear or the doubt that we have around our sexual performance. And the reason men take Viagra is because we want to fuck forever. Why? Because we think if we fuck forever, that makes us more masculine or a better dude, or it's just like we really don't understand the power sex has. We do on some level because we want to be the best, but we don't really want to actually delve into everything that it encompasses. Like you said before, the intimacy and the depth of connection that is possible when you make love with someone.
What has this journey and exploration through, tantric sex and some of these other various things taught you? Like I told you before we hit record, we've taken kind of two opposite journeys to lead us here. Where I was a porn sex addict, up until 4 years ago, and I've remained 100% celibate over these last 4 years because I think much like you, I want to have a wife, I want to have a kids. I feel I got a lot of that sexual acting out, and it's hard to say this. I look back and I'm glad I did it. Like I don't encourage men to do that, but I think I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that I've been able to do in these last 4 years had I not had some of those experiences. So for you, what did you learn about yourself, sexuality, intimacy, just this whole journey? What has it taught you?
I mean, so much, obviously, right? Um, so for me, I probably the deepest lesson in learning is that um, sex is not just sex, and it can be just sex, right? Like I've had amazing sex with one night stands, like phenomenal, mind blowing, some like top five sexual experiences with one night stands, and I've had amazing, you know, multi orgasmic love sex with long term partners, and that sex will give you whatever you show up with, basically. And so, it doesn't matter if it's a one night stand or a long term partner, however much of yourself you bring to that experience and whatever you can and however much safety you can create for you and the other person will determine the level of intimacy and depth that you experience in that connection. Now, it's probably like one of the biggest things. And so, if the sex is shit or if you're not feeling like it's great, then there's a big emotional block between you and this other person. And for me, my job is to find out what that block is and try to eliminate it. Like if I and it doesn't have to be sex, but like sex is a big thing, and it's like if you take sex out of the picture, the same thing is still true for every relationship. If you and me got together and hung out and there was this something in, we weren't really meshing together as mates, there's something in the way. And it's like, what is that thing? But for me, the journey around the tantric lovemaking and the open relating and the sex schools and the sex cults, that being amplified so many times and having so many experiences with so many people in different ways, all it did was showcase that it's always an inside job. It's always like, how much of me am I bringing to this experience with this person? And I can love anyone. I've realized, like, there's no condition to my love, and I can receive love from anyone if I'm prepared to open myself and allow that love in. And that can be really fucking hard because we all have stories around them not worthy of love, and what love should look like and what love should feel like and all those types of things. So they're probably some of the biggest things I've learned.
How does a guy open himself up to love?
First, you got to find, like, Rumi has a beautiful quote, and I can't remember the full sentence, but basically, oh, your journey is not to find love. Your journey is to find all the barriers within yourself that you have towards love, something like that. And so, how does a man open himself up to love? Find the areas that you'd like. Where are your judgments? Biggest thing. Where are your judgments? Judgments of yourself, judgment of others. Because your judgment of yourself and your judgment of others shows you where you don't let love in. That's where you've got a block. And, I believe there's boundaries and there are blocks. Boundaries are like the banks of a river, right? Boundaries allow the current of the river to flow really smoothly. They direct the flow, they direct the current, the river flows smooth. That's a boundary, and we have boundaries so that we don't get hurt, 100%. Blocks are like a dam, and blocks stop the flow of the river. And so our job as individuals and as men is to find out, okay, where am I creating flow and where am I blocking flow? Because if you are, let's talk about your masculine energy, you're a space holder, you're penetrative, your job is to create a structure so that there is flow, so that there is safety, so that there is, harmonious actions being taken all the time. So, you need to have your boundaries. You need to know what they are really well, but you also need to be aware of, like, where's there no movement, where's there's no fluidity. And if you want to go back to the masculine feminine, the concept, like, that's when you're attuned to your feminine, that's when you know when there's no flow, because that's what she does, if you want to give it that. So yeah, where's your judgments? Know where your judgments are. Wherever you judge, that's where you're probably stopping love coming in and stopping love going out too.
Yeah, I love that, man. Look at your judgments, and that's oftentimes where your resistance to allowing it in. Dude, that's powerful. I want to go back to your porn addiction, if you're okay. I think that there's a lot of value here, specifically for our men. You mentioned you kind of quit cold turkey. You know, a week later, you had a nocturnal, you know, remission, kind of wet dream, and then you almost felt like it reset you. Was there anything you were kind of like intuitively or actively doing over that, or do you really feel it was just the removal in 7 days? And curious, like, has that stayed completely out of your life? Is it something you learned to have as a part without it being an addiction? What's your relationship with pornography now? I have my views and opinions around this, and you know, the audience knows those. I'm just curious with you. What was it like through that journey? Were there, like I said, active and intentional things you're doing to help with the rebooting and resetting process? And then what's the relationship with pornography been like since?
I was pretty lucky. Like when I think, regardless of the addiction, when you find an emotional driver strong enough, you'll never go back, right? And I think part of the issue is like we don't dig deep enough into our emotional body to find the driving force that will create enough action. Um, and so for me, like when I couldn't get an erection and I was like 27 and the penny just dropped. So for me, I've not gone back to watching porn as a necessity ever since. You know, I consider myself lucky in that department. You know, for me, that wake up call, that was enough. And then, you know, after a week and I had the wet dream and, you know, I didn't stop masturbating. I just went a week without it. And then I had that wet dream, like I said, and it rebooted my system. And then I could, you know, I self-pleasured kind of every couple of days then. And all of a sudden my orgasms were better. They felt nicer. I was like, oh, this is, oh my God, yes, that's good. You know, it's good again, you know. And when you've gone from not good to good, it's like, well, that's a win in my book. So that again was enough of a motivator to kind of go, all right, I'm just going to do it every couple of days now. I still had problems with relationships. You know, my problem didn't really come with porn. My problem was with intimacy and women after that, and still letting them into my heart because my heart was broken and I was scared and I had, you know, scar tissue from being abandoned and rejected in the past. But my relationship to porn now, without getting into the relationship thing, which maybe you'll go into later, my relationship to porn now is like I don't really watch it at all. There is some really beautiful porn. You know, there is some really artistic, you know, Erica Lust is a beautiful producer. She makes really artistic porn. You know, it's very consensual, it's very energetic, it's, you know, it's in some beautiful locations and it feels more real, if you will. Do you know what I mean? Rather than playing off the fantasies and the shadow aspects, which is what a lot of porn does. You know, like when I first started, you just watch two people have sex and it was amazing. And like 5 years in, you've got to watch a midget fuck a donkey just to get any movement down there. You know, like it was bad. It was real bad. I don't believe porn is the problem. I believe, you know, like it's like saying, oh, cigarettes give people cancer. It's like, well, people have been smoking tobacco for fucking thousands of years, right? It's not the cigarettes. It's our newfound addiction to needing something to suppress an emotion. Emotion drives action. Emotion is everything, and emotion, energy in motion. So that's what I mean. Like when you found enough of an emotional driver, you'll never go back to the old habit that you know didn't serve. You just got to find the right emotional driver or understand what the root cause is. So I watch it occasionally. I recommend it to some couples. Like if I coach a couple and they're struggling in the bedroom and they really struggle to communicate to each other about desires, I tell them to watch porn together and I recommend some beautiful directors and producers of it. And that way they can watch it and they can go, hey, I really like that. I like that too. All right, cool. Let's try that, you know? And they don't have to, because some of them haven't explored sexually. So they don't even know what they may like, you know, like, because they've been so afraid to explore sexually. You know, my relationship to porn is obviously I do believe there is good porn and I do believe there is bad porn. And I believe that, you know, a lot of the cheap, nasty, like, you know, men dominating or overpowering women is not so good. Don't get me wrong, some women like to be role play and some men like to role play. And so I don't, you know, I'm not shaming anyone that has any kinks or desires either. But it's our relationship to the kink or our relationship to the desire and how that affects our regular emotional state. So yeah, that's you know, the tall and short of it. Like porn is not inherently bad. There is some not so good porn, and you know, I think a lot of people it's driven, especially a lot of actors or actresses, it's driven from a need to be loved. Like again, people think sex is the deepest form of intimacy we can have. And, you know, I used to send sneaky little videos and get sneaky little videos. And I think that's a healthy part of a relationship, for a lot of people. it's mostly like if you are using it on the regular, what's the emotion or what's the thing that's really driving this habit, this action? No different to smoking or drinking or drugs or TV or scrolling.
Yeah, it's never. I mean, in my experience in the work that we've been doing here for 3.5 4 years, working with hundreds of guys, one on one, it's never like porn is never the problem. It always becomes the outlet. It always becomes the pacifier. They're running to it to escape something within their life, whether it's work, stress, lack of intimacy within their relationship, lack of confidence, lack of understanding themselves. They haven't done the inner work to know who they truly are. And I will say, obviously, just go listen to our recent episode that we had guys out there, but there definitely is in the internet world, right? A lot of this kind of free stuff that we're just basically consuming in like bite-sized chunks. Like, I'm not an advocate of any of that. I think you're more speaking to like an artistic kind of display, where it's fully, consensual and whatnot. But yeah, we're fully clear on our thoughts around that. I just wanted to kind of get your take. Talk about your sex cult, if you can, kind of what that what that
Sure.
journey was like, because that was
Yeah.
something in getting prepared for today. I wasn't sure if I wanted to explore it, but then based upon our pre-recording conversation, I want to kind of get into your experience there and then what it's been like since getting out.
Yeah. Look, when I say sex cult, what I mean is like it was heavily sexually focused, but it was really a school of evolution, or it was a mystery school. It was a school to study the mystery of life, and inclusive of that was Tantra, occult cosmology, astrology, magic, um, and all those types of things. And so, I say sex cult because it's got a bit more of a punch, and there was a lot of sex, like and so I can't, it's the easiest way for people to digest, but it wasn't necessarily like you must do this and you have to do this. It wasn't that rigid. Was there shadows in it? Of course there were. I think with anyone that creates a movement of any kind, like there's always going to be some shadowy aspects within a culture of an organization. And so there were definitely shadowy aspects. They were very pro open relating polyamory, very much, very not against monogamy, but it was very not supported. Like it wasn't like we condemn it, but it was always like, why? Why? They would always question monogamous container. And so they were very pro open relating and polyamory, which was, and the intention behind it was like if you are, they believe in the body and the soul, and then they call it the void, and the void is like the center of the galaxy. It's like where everything came from. It's nothingness and everythingness, or it's beyond duality, basically. So that's enlightenment. If you were looking at the Buddhist text, like that would be enlightenment, to be able to sit in pure nothingness. So nothing is separate from yourself. But down from that is the soul realm, and the soul realm is more like I am not my ego. I am not my personality. I'm not my emotions. I'm not my thoughts. I'm beyond that. And when we connect on a soul level, it doesn't matter whether you're the same gender, the same race, the same color, the same age, the same whatever. That's where unconditional love can stem from. And so a lot of the practices we did, that the intention was to try to be in your soul and remove any barriers to love that you may giving or receiving love. Now it didn't have to be sex, but sexual energy was very included, because when you look at the world we live in, right? When you have sex, you have the possibility to create human life. That's magic. That's like really fucking magic. There's a lot of energy there. That's a like, that's phenomenal. And if you're not going to create human life with that lovemaking, with the masculine seed and the feminine womb, then what are you doing with all that energy? What are you doing with that seed? What are you doing with all that magic? And so, we would do a lot of temples, a lot of sex magic rituals. And so, again, you didn't have to have sex. It wasn't they weren't they didn't ever force you to do anything. They may have been very suggestive, but they were never forced. Part of the process was like, can you continuously open yourself up to receive love from people in the room in whatever way that looks like, while still honoring your boundaries, right? They were big on boundaries, and they said, if you don't want things, then that's fine. But it was very much like, how can you find all the barriers to love inside of yourself and open that up? And then how can you also give love unconditionally to anyone in the room to support their dreams, regardless of, whether you think they're hairy or smelly or big or small or attractive or unattractive. So, the sex cult, when I say that, it was a school of studying the mystery and trying to just open to love more and more and really love unconditionally and see people beyond the pain that they may have as a human, because we've all got pain. You know, we've all got scar tissue from our upbringing, our experiences. And it's like, if you can see someone beyond that pain, you can love the whole world unconditionally. And that was really what the ultimate goal of all the teachings was. Um, but yeah, it was confronting. You know, you really had to face all the judgment that you have of everyone in the world, and the people in the room and all those types of things. So yeah, that's a quick overview of it.
No, I appreciate you, being willing to openly discuss and kind of share, share some of that. I think that's something that, maybe a small percentage of our audience, may be aware, but I think it's something, whether or not you're going to support it or be involved in it, I'm just purely fascinated, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, you talked about a pivotal moment for you, or something you've really had to kind of grow, process, and heal from, was this heartbreak. Um, I come from, I think, a school of thought that I think all young men need to experience some significant heartbreak within their life. I think it teaches them a lot about themselves. I think it forces them to look inside, and I also think it forces them to look at what are they looking for in a partner in this world. I've gone through multiple ones, and one of them as recent as 4 years ago, really kind of at the beginning of this journey. What are your thoughts and takes on that? I mean, do you think, heartbreak is something that is necessary for all of us to go through, to ultimately step into, the life that we're here to live?
I don't think it's necessary, but I do believe it is an initiation, right? Like, if you fell in love with your high school sweetheart and it was perfect from the beginning and, amazing, congratulations. I 100% support that, and I don't believe that they need to heartbreak each other or be heartbroken in order to, figure out more of who they are. They just hit the nail on the head early. So congratulations. In saying that, they're going to have moments of heartbreak within that relationship, like, and so, you know when we say, like, do you need heartbreak, like, it is inevitable on some level in your life. Where heartbreak could be a relationship, it could be your parents dying, it could be your best friend like getting heavy into drugs and stealing shit and whatever, and you have to let that relationship go. Like, heartbreak doesn't have to be a relationship heartbreak. So yeah, I think heartbreak is inevitable, and 100%. So because it's inevitable, yes, it's a massive part of life, and it's an initiation into, fuck, who am I now? Like, how do I deal with all these emotions? How do I rebuild myself from this place? How do I come back into love? Because part of what I believe, and majority of people are going to have be heartbroken at some point with a relationship. That's pretty common. So yeah, yes, it's necessary in that context, because how you bounce back from that will determine every relationship you're in from now on. And men specifically never really bounce back that well. They just grit their teeth, get drunk, and move on, predominantly. And what happens is, the next time love comes around, they're not prepared for it, and they're not ready, and they carry the scar tissue from the past into their new relationship. And so, and women do this too, but women are a lot better at dealing with their shit than we are, typically speaking, generally speaking. And so yeah, it's an initiation. It's initiation into, okay, from here, how do I want to rebuild my life? And how do I heal or balm the scar tissue of my broken heart, so that the next relationship that comes, I've learned, I've evolved, I've adapted. I know more of who I am. I can bring more of me to the relationship, which means we probably experience more love than I did in the last one, because I'm more aware. And so it is necessary. It is an initiation, and it will do nothing for you if you don't reflect properly on it and actually process what comes up through the heartbreak. If all you do is drink and ignore, you're not evolving at all, and you're not going to experience more love in the future. And if you do experience more love from a relationship who, helps you feel something you haven't felt for, let's say, 5 years, because you've been heartbroken and shattered, you are going to sacrifice your own boundaries for that love. You're going to break your own boundaries for it, because it's going to be something you've never experienced. And then later on, at some point, you're going to resent them because you've compromised on what you wanted, because someone's giving you love and you're not used to receiving it. And that's the biggest problem, I think, is we as men and women, but predominantly we as men, we pretend we're fine and we have a feeling of inadequacy. Pretty much everyone does this. I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And when love shows up and it's intense, we sacrifice and compromise on values, on beliefs, on virtues, and then all of a sudden this love becomes more important than our own life. And now we get lost. Now then we lose ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. I love that frame there, right? The heartbreak is an initiation. I look at a lot of what we do. I mean, it's integrated into our company logo and our symbol here. It's a phoenix into a lion's head. There's a death of the old self, to fully be able to transcend above this addiction, and then we leash you back out into the world as a lion, right? And it's like now you are the man that can conquer the world. You can begin to pursue your purpose, and you begin to attract that right woman. Do you notice maybe with some of the men that you work with, or maybe this was your experience, that men that are struggling with a porn addiction are more susceptible to the heartbreak because now they've put all these women kind of up on this pedestal, right? Like it's kind of becomes like almost an element of worshiping where we're sitting here pleasuring ourselves to a woman on the screen that we're never going to be having. It's one after one, like the next one, the next one, the next one. And then when we get our hands on one in real life, it's like we want to hold on to it because now we feel something because there's flesh tied to this that we never got through the screen. And then when that's stripped away from us, I know that this was my experience. It's like felt like I just lost everything. In reality, it was like I never really should have had that to begin with. So curious if that's anything that you've ever experienced, is like the men struggling with porn are a lot more susceptible.
Yeah, well, I think that they're susceptible to two things. One is an over attachment, which is what I feel you just explained, right? Of over attaching themselves to a woman's love, um, and putting too much expectation on what it should look and feel like, and what the sex should be like, and so because they're so addicted to the screen, they create an idealistic vision or an idealistic experience of what it must be like, because they just live in this fantasy constantly, right? The other thing that I experience a lot, the other, extreme outcome is that a lot of these men hate women, right? A lot of them, but they may not hate, they have a lot of resentment towards them still. They have a lot of like, because most of the time, so for me, porn is a pathway, right? Pathway to pleasure. And when you look at a screen and you do that every time, the pathway to pleasure that you're creating in your brain becomes a fucking highway, right? And so now, and because we always want to take the path of least resistance, this is much easier than being with our bodies, being with our breath, pleasuring ourselves, exploring our whole body. And so, usually what happens is when we become transfixed on like needing that quick dopamine hit, and because women want to slow down, women want emotional connection, women want these other things, but men aren't in tune with their feminine, if we want to go back to that context, then they just build this resentment towards women and resentment towards anything soft, anything gentle, because that's where their scar tissue lies. Because in the past, they opened that soft part, it got broken, it got shattered, it got shamed, it got stamped on, it got whatever. And so now they just close that thing up and refuse to kind of let anyone in again. And it comes through this really kind of passive aggressive, or sometimes not even passive, just really aggressive, like needing to dominate or own because they can't soften and surrender. So yeah, they're the two extremes that I see predominantly.
Yeah, and I guess you're seeing this in today's culture, in your red pill, in your MGTOW, this kind of manosphere communities, right? Is that kind of like is that what is manifesting there?
Yeah, a large part of that is, like we must claim our power back, and I'm like, fuck, it's, like men should lead 100%, right? Don't get me wrong, men should lead, and or the masculine should lead, and but no one's going to follow any form of masculine energy, whether it's in a man or a woman, that doesn't create safety, that doesn't create protection, right? Yeah, it's like when you've been hurt, and we've all been hurt, but you've never healed that hurt, you've never dealt with the scar tissue. I really like to say scar tissue over trauma. I think trauma is a real trigger word these days, and I prefer to say scar tissue. But when you don't deal with that, then it's going to filter through the rest of your relationships, the rest of your love, the rest of the way you engage with women. And that's the healing path, if you want to call it that, of like, can you reestablish trust between you and the thing that hurt you, or the thing that you think hurt you, and reestablish a relationship there, whatever that is.
I love that scar tissue analogy because I think, anybody that has experienced any type of scar tissue in their body, it's like you rub your fingers over it. It's a little bit grittier, right? It's a little bit tougher, and trauma should toughen us up in those areas. It's not like we want to remove it from our lives. It's like, no, we need to integrate this into ourselves and make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Exactly. Yeah.
I,
What did
I,
it
I,
teach you? What did it teach you? You know, like
exactly.
I got a big scar on my knee, and I'm like, all right, don't go diving into bushes that you don't know what's in there, right? It was a big fucking metal star dropper in Australia, you know, big metal spike, and it's like I sliced my knee open. Okay, lesson
Yeah.
learned. I look at that scar and I go, that was something that happened. I don't sit there and go, oh my God, I can never do that again. It's like, okay, we learn, you know, and our scar tissue is important, right? Like you're a bodybuilder. How do you build your muscle? You go to the gym and you tear it, you break it. You don't build muscle going to the gym. You break muscle going to the gym. And then it repairs overnight or repairs the next day, you know? And that's what builds your muscle up. Like we must experience some level of hardship. You know, that's why experiences teach us things. So yeah, scar tissue for me is like, if you try to reject the experience, then you're never going to learn, you're never going to grow, you're never going to find the love again, and you're never going to be able to experience more than that because you're stuck in that reality.
Yeah. Are you open to talking about your personal relationship status? I mean, you've been on this journey, man, where it's been, all the way back, 4 or 5 times a day, pleasuring yourself, and then we go down this other journey, and then we join this, this sex cult, and it's kind of all over the place. And you said something to me that really, I'm going to tell you, it was shocking to hear before we record. Is that something you're open to kind of discussing where you're
Yeah,
at right
man.
now?
100%. 100%. Went celibate for a long time when I went on that journey of Tantra, you know, and suppressed a lot of sexuality and like still self-pleasured and ejaculated every now and again and stuff. And then I got into like this concept of open relating, right? And that was a big like, all right, what the fuck is this, you know? And like I met a lot of people who were like, yeah, you know, I don't own my partner. I'm not in control. Like I don't own them. We love each other, we choose each other, but that's from a place of freedom. And that really started to blow my mind. Because every relationship I'd been in before that, I can't say that I never looked at other women. I did. Like to say that I didn't find other women attractive would be a lie. You know, it was just, and so all of a sudden there was this permission piece of like, oh, I don't have to lie about this other attraction I have. It doesn't mean I need to go and fuck them, but I don't even have to lie about it, you know? Don't have to pretend that, oh no, I don't see any other women in the world other than you. I'm sorry, that's just not true for me, you know? Um, I'm not saying I can love these other women the way that I would love my partner who birthed our children and has been with me for 10 years or 15 years. Like that's different. But to deny the fact that I am sexually attracted to someone, for me, I'm just lying. And I don't want to lie, you know? And I don't believe that my partner is never going to look at another dude and be like, look at that, whoa, you know, like, okay, cool. And so for me, the journey of open relating was really a permission piece. And look, it's fucking hard path, right? Like it's not easy. It's not easy to know that your partner's going to go have sex with someone else right now, and you've got to be like, okay, how can I love myself in this moment? You know, that was a hard journey for a couple of years, but I really wanted to explore that and commit to myself around like how much self love must I have for me if my partner is having sex with someone else and I'm not triggered and I'm not jealous. I'm like, wow, that's a whole lot of self-love I've got to be able to have to be like, yeah, I'm still worthy. It doesn't mean she's not attacking me. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm like, whoa. When that dropped, you know, and I'm not there 100% either. Like I'm not, you know, it's like that was just a journey and experience. But I did that for 4 years and I experienced a lot of love and opening and permission. Also experienced a lot of scar tissue, you know, experienced a lot of pain. My last relationship was 9 months long. We were international. We were open relating. She was still very much in love with her ex, who she was still relating with. And there was just a lot of manipulation and a lot of control from both of us. And, you know, I ended that after 9 months. And it took me 3 years to get over that fully. Like 18 months to finally go, wow, I don't feel entangled with her anymore. But 3 years for me to finally go, oh, I'm actually ready for love again. You know, like like there's a big difference between, oh, I don't feel enmeshed with her and I'm actually ready to give and receive love. And I had lovers in between that. You know, I didn't go celibate the whole period. Um, and I'm of the belief that, you know, on some level, the fastest way to get over someone is to get under someone else, right? On some level, I believe there is an aspect of truth in it. Now, I'm not saying we broke up yesterday, I'm going to go fuck someone today. That's not what I mean. But what I mean is, if my heart is broken and I am scared to let love in again, going on dates and starting to try to express intimacy with other people again is going to show me where all my blocks still are, like where all my fears are, where all my doubts are. And so I'm what I mean by that is not go fuck someone the next day. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is starting to relate with other people after a heartbreak and after a certain period of grieving and letting go of the attachment to what the future may have been with that person, because that's what we do. Then there comes a period of like, okay, how can I open to love again? How can I find the barriers and the parts in my heart that are scared to go to that depth again that I was in last time? Um, and for me, that's what part of the dating process has been for the last 18 months since then, like, okay. And not just can I get good, yes, I can get laid in the first couple of dates. That's fun. Okay, awesome. But also, can I get good at date 7 and 8? Like can I see someone for a couple of months and get to know them and find out what their insecurities are and share with them my insecurities and learn how to communicate and learn how to deal with those moments of like, oh, I don't want to go on this date. And it's like, okay, well, why not? What's the resistance? I don't believe in you meet the one and it's perfect. It happens occasionally, but the one is built. Like that oneness is built over time and reps with you and her or you and him. On repeat, and just like going to the gym, just like getting the perfect body, you don't just go to the gym and do one perfect training session and it's done. It's like it's reps and reps and reps and different workouts and different diets and different strategies and training your routine. And so it's, for me, it's just reps in the bank now. And last year I was probably a little bit too frivolous. I moved states and I moved to a new place and I was like, oh, yeah, it's fun. And I went on dates and I met girls and I had some fun. And yeah, and then, I realized that I've been wanting a family since I was 20. Being a dad is the single most desire I've ever had. Like I'm put on this planet to be a dad. I know that. And like I said before, if you want to lose weight, you got to stop eating chocolate bars and get off the fucking couch. And last year, upon reflection, I looked at the year and I was like, okay, I'm not going to judge myself for the year. I moved states, I made new friends, it was a big shift. I went on lots of dates. I probably had a little bit too much free sex, a little bit too much kind of frivolous sex. And I went on some dates with some beautiful women, wanted to enter relationships, and they didn't want to enter relationships with me. And I was like, okay, well, let's reflect. Like, why not? What happened? Why was it not a match? And probably because I'm like, I want to be a dad. I want to be a dad. But my actions weren't, and I want to be in partnership, obviously. To be a dad, I want to be in partnership. I don't just want to, knock someone up. And so why were we not in sync with this desire? I think thought we were a good match. And then I realized it's like I was having probably, the moment the what felt like a real connection showed up, I was like, hey, I really like you and I'm going to cut off all my other connections and blah, blah, blah. And I'm very honest. And I can imagine on the other side of that would have felt like, holy fuck, this guy's coming on really strong, as opposed to, I like you, but I don't need you. And that's a superpower, right? To be able to feel love, but not feel the need for the love. It doesn't matter if you're man or woman. That's a sweet spot, right? Like men freak out, whether you're anxiously attached or avoidantly attached is irrelevant. It's like when we feel like obligations, the biggest killer of intimacy in all relationships in any type, right? And so, yeah, I decided to clean shop this year. I haven't had sex since. And I'm not saying I'm not going to be celibate. I'm not saying I'll be celibate. What I'm saying is I'm not going to have sex with a woman I'm not dating. And I'm not going to date a woman that I don't perceive a future relationship with. So for me, like rather than being hardcore, like, I will not have sex until the one because I know me, I've done that before. All that does is put pressure on the next woman and pressure on the relationship and pressure on me. And then I put expectations and then I get caught in my head and then, I can't be me naturally. And I've done that and I don't like it. So for me, it's like, no, I may not get married to the next woman, but I'm not going to date a woman consecutively unless I actually perceive this to be something that has potential. And so for me, they're not hard and fast rules. They're flexible because I want to I want to go off how I'm feeling, but I'm not going to be run by my, oh, I need to have sex. And after I did this, 3 weeks later, Saturday night, I cooked myself an amazing spaghetti bolognese. It took like 2.5 hours, chopped up all the ingredients. Saturday night, and then I started crying because I was like, why the fuck are you single, Tyran? You're 36, you're conscious, you're aware, you've done all the tantric stuff, you're aware of your patterns, you've got a great business, you're fit, you're capable, you're a great cook. Like I just like all these things that I've worked really hard to be good at. And it's a Saturday night and I'm fucking home alone and it was that deep longing for a relationship that I had been masking through having sex with all these women last year and being able to get that. And so I sat there and I cried. I listened to love songs and I walked up and down the beach at 8 o'clock at night. And I sat with all of this longing and all this loneliness and I allowed it to crack my heart open because now that emotional experience is driving my action to be like, yeah, cool. I'm not going on dates unless I actually perceive these women to be of a standard that I have set for myself.
I love that, man. And once again, I really appreciate you being open to share, all, all of this. It's been a fascinating journey that you've been on, man. And I have no doubt with your awareness and consciousness and all the work you've done and the man that you've, built yourself into, that everything that you dream and desire to have will come into fruition for you, man. Like I truly, truly believe that, man. I think you're on the path. What, I mean, outside of, fatherhood and hopefully finding the one here for you, what's 2023 got you excited about on the work front, man? What exciting things you got going on, with your coaching?
Yeah, so I run. You can't really see it. I've got the Advanced Man Academy. It's my masculine development program. Yeah, so that's got we built last year was a massive rebuilding year. It was just building the foundations for all of that. So yeah, we've got a solid crew in that now. We've got a 4 month trial starting in March with a fresh group. I've got a couple of in-person events which I haven't been running because of COVID and all that type of stuff. So I've got my first 5-day men's event. I call it the Advance because as men we should not retreat. So we don't run retreats, we run advances.
Love that.
um, yeah, that's why it's called the Advanced Man Academy. We're just men and we're just constantly advancing in our lives. So we got a couple of events coming up for that. Yeah, I've got some really good networking stuff coming up. I want to run my big my little secret dream or vision, which I haven't told too many people. I want to run like I've always had this dream to be like the Tony Robbins of men's work, like to be in a stadium of like, a couple of thousand people, maybe not 20K like him, but like a couple of thousand men. And I've been to a couple of big events where there's 300-400 dudes, and I've always found there's just something missing. Like I've been to a lot of events now, and I want to run one at the end of this year in the Gold Coast with about hopefully 500 to 1,000 men, and I want to get some massive keynote speakers, and I want to cover the three aspects of health that I cover in the academy, and that's physical health, mental health, and emotional health. And so I want to run it over 2 days, and I want big keynote speakers, and then I want to get some amazing facilitators. I'll probably do one workshop. I've got some other mates over here that might run one, and I want to take the 500 to 1,000 men through a process there and then, all together. I was at this event a couple of years ago, and all it was men upstage talking and telling men how to be men, and it just everything in me was just getting like nasty because we get told everywhere how to be a man, and I get sick of being told. And so I want to run this event, so it's like an all-in workshop, and I want to take these guys. I want to go, cool, right? Everyone, move the chairs out, partner up with 5 random men around you, right? And then they just partner with these 5 random dudes, and then we take them through processes. And I want to do that for 2 days, and I want to make it like basically the greatest men's event ever. And I want to start that this year. And in 5 years, I want that to be international. I want that to be I want it to be in America, Europe, and Australia, and I want to really grow that. Um, that's my big thing. And then I'm running an Ironman triathlon this year myself as well, so I'm excited for that.
No kidding. Is this the first one?
Yeah, I did a half Ironman a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, we got my
Okay.
full one in June. So yeah.
Awesome, brother. Well, good luck with that, man. Tell the audience where they can connect with you online, where you're hanging out socially, and then we'll wrap it up with our last question here today.
Awesome, amazing. Yeah, so I'm in the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. Yeah, Instagram and Facebook predominantly. I have a website, tyranmowbray.com. I do have some stuff on TikTok. I'm currently not putting a lot of energy into it. I'm gonna rebuild that out. But yeah, Instagram, Tyran Mowbray, Facebook, Tyran Mowbray. Send me an email if you want, or hit me up on the website, and yeah, I'll get in contact. I'm pretty active on the socials myself. I probably spend too much time on there, to be honest. So feel free
I
to
think
send
I
me a
think
message, and I'll always reply.
Yeah, I think we all do. It's the pains of running an online business, right? It's like we understand the dangers behind it, but I always tell the men that go through our program, man, you can either allow social media to use you, which is many men do, or you can use it for good. And that's been my approach over these last couple of years is how can I utilize this to reach men all over the world and build a very successful business. So incredible, man. Well, we'll get all that stuff plugged down there in the show notes for you guys. Obviously, make sure to give Tyran a follow on social. He's putting out some great content. And if you're interested in joining and connecting with, finding more about his work, obviously we'll link up his business as well. So Tyran, obviously the title of the show is called The Superhuman Life. When I talk about living a superhuman life, for me, it's really a belief system. It's how I try to show up in the world every single day. And it's coming from the belief that I do believe we're here for a purpose. I think that there's a calling on each one of our lives. Like this just wasn't an accident that we're here today. But knowing and believing you're here for a purpose, I don't think is enough. Like you need to be very intentional about your development, about your physical development, about your spiritual, about your mental, about your emotional development. And when you pair those two up, that in my eyes is what living a superhuman life. But I like to end every single episode with the guest take. So Mr. Tyran Mowbray, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Well, there's a saying by Stephen Harvey, and he just goes, you want an ordinary life, you don't have to try. You want to live an ordinary life, you just gotta do the ordinary shit. But if you don't want to live an ordinary life, you want to live an extraordinary life, you got to do extra. And so for me, it's like find the thing that brings you the most fucking joy in this world and commit 150% to that thing. And if you've got to do a job on the side to fucking support it, that's fine. But like, if you want to be superhuman, find the thing that makes you happy and do it with the utmost conviction possible, because you are then ahead of probably about 99% of the population. Find out what makes you happy and do it religiously every day.
Amen, brother. Well said. Guys, check out Tyran. Give him a follow. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you are getting value out of this, guys, this is episode 175. We are almost 4 years into the show. We've seen tremendous growth, guys, and it's all because of you. So we thank you guys for joining us here today. If you're getting value out of these episodes, remember you can support us by leaving us a 5-star rating there on Apple or Spotify, wherever you're consuming this. But more importantly, if there's a guy that's going through something in his life, maybe he's struggling with some of his own shame in his own life. Maybe he's struggling with knowing where he's supposed to step into his masculine or even the balancing between his feminine and masculine energy. Do us a favor, but do him the blessing by sharing today's conversation with him. But for Tyran, Frank Rich, host here, we love you guys, and we'll see you next week.